knowing who baptized him, Don Payne, who was a patriarch in the reorganized church, I said, yeah, I think it's probably still good, Jim. Don't worry about that part. But we've had discussions now, usually every time, about scriptures and things, and it's focused his life on, or his path, I think, on some things that maybe should have been focused on a long time ago, but it's also focused my attention. And my wife, I was just sitting last night mourning the Nebraska football loss. No, not really. But my wife, we were having supper, and I just kind of, I don't know if I wasn't responsive, I was still listening to her, and she goes, what's wrong with you? What's because I wasn't my usual joyful self, I guess. And I got to think about it, and I think it's the overriding thought about my brother. Your parents, are old, and they're going to go away eventually, but your brothers and sisters, they're always young in your heart and mind. And it's a time for reflection for me in terms of who I am and what I'm doing, and where I'm going. Because the day is going to come for me, I don't know if it'd be like my dad's dad, just fall asleep and not wake up, or like some friends of mine who were killed in car wrecks and saw it coming. I don't know. But I do know that there's some things in my life that have to change dramatically. And I'm suggesting to us all that there are things in all of our lives that need to change dramatically. Okay? And one of the things I become aware of, I walk around in a stupor most of the time. I'm not an intuitive person, I don't think, is that there is controversy in our church, among ourselves, among individuals, personal things that go on that cause problems. Those need to be resolved. Those need to be resolved, even to the point of each of us humbling ourselves and going to the other person and telling them that we love them, and that if there's ever been anything that we've done to offend them, that we ask for their forgiveness. That's scriptural. We need to ask for forgiveness. Because one of our concerns as the priesthood is kind of where we're going and how we're supposed to get there, right? Right? I mean, what are we doing? And I know one of the things that will keep us from fulfilling even a small portion of the responsibilities that we have as priesthood and as individual members of this church. And remember, in the hierarchy of things, any member of the priesthood is not any higher or lower than any other member of this church, period, in Christ's eyes. The thing that will keep us from doing that is that kind of controversy. Not being humble enough to subserve our egos and our attitudes to other people's. I'm right no matter what, right? Well, I rarely am right. My wife is kind enough to point that out. I at times, because I'm partially colorblind, I have gone out of the house with a black and a brown sock on, to the embarrassment of my wife when it was pointed out by other people. I'm very, very rarely right. In order for us to fulfill our obligations, we have to come together as a people, individually. And we have to begin to dedicate our time and efforts. Excuse me, I've got feedback in my hearing aid. We have to be able to dedicate our time and effort primarily to the church. How you do that when you work a living, have to make a living still, I'm not exactly sure, other than we need to take the church with us and the gospel with us as we go into the workplace, as we go to school, as we deal with other people who aren't members of our church. We have to reflect what Christ asked us to reflect, and that's Him. So, in a way, Paul You know, you wonder why Christ chose him. I think it's because he was preeminently qualified to do what Christ asked him to do. He was highly educated, a brilliant mind. He was an orator, although his appearance would, you would think he was a vagrant. I don't know. They say he was maybe 5'2" or 3", stooped, had bow legs, and just wasn't a very attractive person until he opened his mouth and started to talk. So I'm wondering what people think about you and I when they see us. Do we reflect Christ in our attitudes, in our speech, in our relationships, in our efforts? Or do we reflect who we really are? Sinful, disobedient, difficult to deal with, egotistical. The commitment that Paul made, and I think this is my thought. Okay, it's not in the scriptures, but I think as he was sitting or standing or whatever he was doing for 3 days blind, he was repenting, and he was thinking about what had happened to him and who he had met and what he was going to do about it. And that, if you look at who he was before, who Saul was, and his dedication and determination in doing what he was doing, that same dedication or the fever of that dedication and commitment transferred to what he did after he became Paul. You know, to stand up as he did in Athens and speak before the people who he spoke to about the gospel, that had to take some intestinal fortitude, motivation. Because the people he spoke to in Athens were used to the polemics, the arguments, the back and forth of different ideas. That's why they were standing out there where they were near the Acropolis. They loved to debate. And every one of them who heard Paul, I'm sure started out thinking, I know a lot more than this poor little Jewish guy from Palestine. And yet there were a few, not many, a few that heard what he said to them and believed. You and I have the power that Paul has. You and I have that power to show to other people who Christ is and what he did for us. We're going to have a chance this morning to, in a sense, meet Christ face to face. But he's always with us. He said he would never leave us. He's always with us, and he wants us to be his ambassadors, his ministers, his spokespersons in the world. And like Paul, we need to stand up and do that. Okay? Where'd my piano player go? He left. Oh, there's the piano player. He's playing a different piano. If you would, in the gray hymnal, we're going to sing hymn 403 in the gray hymnal, and then we're going to go to class. And if you'd stand, please.